right now of the Washington Times, Emily Miller, is with us. Happy New Year to you, Emily.
Happy New Year, Cam.
All right, I got first things first. We've had you on. We've talked about the new gun laws in Washington D.C. Now you have to re-register all of your firearms. What is this I saw on Twitter? Your Twitter feed earlier today. D.C. police have misplaced not just your fingerprints, but some 30,000 fingerprints.
Well, that's this whole re-registration thing. So it launches today. It's the first time in American history this has ever happened. The only other place, there's two places in the country that have handgun and long gun registries. It's Hawaii and D.C. because long guns aren't used in crimes, as you know. It's very rare. I think it's between 0 and 2 a year in D.C. But D.C. still makes you register them. And this goes back to 1976. Well, then they created this new law in 2009 after the Heller decision that registrations would only last for 3 years. And every 3 years, your registration expires and you have to renew it. Well, it was supposed to be online, but for whatever reason, the D.C. police claim that they have lost or don't have all of the fingerprints between 2009 and today and the electronic photos. And let me just point out, I had my fingerprints taken in February 2012 at the police station. It was on a computer screen. And so these are electronic. And unless you're the NSA, I don't know how you lose electronic fingerprints. So I was just saying to Cameron when I was on hold, I said, you know what's going to happen is we're going to have a bloody crime scene and Emily Miller's fingerprints are going to be all over the place. So that's what's coming up next. It's terrifying. So all of our fingerprints, and you go back to 1976, a lot of those were, paper, but all the modern ones are electronic, so they're in servers somewhere. And anyway, the point is that all of us, no one knows the exact number because, of course, the police haven't kept good records of this registry, but between 30 to 50,000 people, the police estimate, will have to go down to D.C. police station and get fingerprinted again. And those fingerprints will then go through the FBI fingerprint check, criminal background check, which covers exactly the same databases that the NICS checks does for free. So D.C. decides to overcharge us for this little tidbit and is making a $30 profit off this re-registration.
Where's that money go? Does it go into the general fund?
The general fund, which means obviously someone's slush fund. So we pay $48 to re-register a gun, which, by the way, I spent $65 on the government fees 2 years ago. Start again, $48, $13 is just flat-out registration, which we'll have to do every 3 years, and then $48, and then the $35 is for the FBI print. So I called the FBI, and I said, how much do you charge for a civilian background check fingerprint? And they said $18. So D.C. just makes up these numbers to profit from them, and they're going to pull in at least $1 million on this gun tax, is what I'm calling it.
Wow.
Yeah. Not to mention the tens of thousands of people who have to leave work, go down to the police headquarters, give their electronic fingerprints. Let's hope they keep them this time. And all that being said, homicides are up this year in D.C. Robberies with a gun are up this year. So instead of going after the bad guys, all of the law-abiding people are going to go down to the police station, right?
Well, I mean, look, that's the thing. If you want to be law-abiding, you will. But how many? I talked with Christopher Bauman, the head of the D.C. Police Officers Union, a while ago, and last time I talked with him, he said, I can't remember the last time there was ever somebody arrested for a violent crime in Washington, D.C., and they were a registered gun owner.
Well, actually, the Heller 2 case, which is, is working its way through district court, and
right.
The lawyer, Steve Holbrook, is the lead attorney, and he's just filed for summary judgment. And so there's a ton of information in those filings. They've been doing all these depositions with the police, and there has never been at all a crime with a registered gun. There have been times when a crime has existed in a place where a registered gun was in existence. So, you could be in an apartment building. Like in my apartment building, someone gets murdered, and I have a registered gun in the premise. That's the only thing that they could find. But there's no registered guns being used. It's not happening. The criminals are getting their guns on the streets. And a lot of law-abiding people just aren't going down to the police station to give over their guns and tell the government. Because the reason and what's so scary about this is the D.C., the penalty, the police have this 2-month window for you to come re-register. And it's supposedly based on your birth date. So January and February of 2000 now are going in January and February. But then they skew it for the first 2 years. So the February, March people go in May and June. So it's totally complicated. So obviously, people register their guns in 76 are supposed to figure this out, so they won't. And the penalty, what happens is if you don't go in your 2-month window, 90 days later, your registration is expired. It's gone. It doesn't exist. So then you're in possession of an unregistered gun, which is a felony, and you get a year in jail. On top of that, the second part of it is the gun itself gets flipped into the category of prohibited guns like sawed-off shotguns and what D.C. calls assault weapons. So then that's when the D.C. has the right to confiscate it. So, and they have all our home addresses. They have our home addresses. They have the serial numbers of our guns, and they know if we register. Now, the police won't tell me how they're going to enforce this. The only way they're going to enforce this is to show up at all these people's houses, charge them with felonies and take their guns.
Right.
And gun people are told all the time that we're crazy when we start talking about confiscation. Well, this is it. This is happening in our nation's capital, and it's going to have to go through the courts. I can't imagine it's going to be upheld. It's so unconstitutional. But this is what they get away with when they can, and this is what they're going to continue to do.
Yeah, and again, if you were to ask Emily, and you have asked a lot of elected officials there in Washington D.C., what is the public safety benefit to this? I imagine you hear a lot of vague, vapid gobbledygook.
Well, they get all their information from Bloomberg's funded school at Hopkins. This is where all the the study comes from. I said to the chairman of the city council, Phil Mendelson, he wrote these laws, just like last week on the phone. I said, look, you have all of our names and social security numbers. You have all the identifying characteristics for a NICS check, which is the FBI federal background check, which is used millions of times a year for gun sales. It's pretty effective. Just use that. Put our names to it. If you are so afraid that in the 3 years between these expiration dates that one of us went out and did a felony charge or became a drug addict, you can check us. And he said, no, you can get more things from a fingerprint background check from the FBI than the NICS check. And this is solely based on these researchers that are paid by Bloomberg at Hopkins. That's where he gets all this information. None of it's been proven independently because it's not true. They're the same databases in the fingerprinting and in the NICS check. It's local, state, and federal. It's it's felonies and it's mental health and it's all that thing. But mostly it's just the criminal charges. So that's the problem is you've got in their ear of the city council, all you've got are these people funded by Bloomberg to perpetuate these myths that have nothing to do with public safety. And, and it just astounds me that they've gotten away with it for this long. And I do believe that it'll be overturned. And people keep saying to me today, well, why don't you move? People around the country, move.
Right.
Everybody needs to move out of D.C. was the first thing they say. And I say, no, that's not what Americans should do. We're American citizens, and the Constitution is not being upheld. We have to fight back and change it. And then a lot of people commented in my story or on Twitter and said, well, nobody should go in, nobody should re-register, everybody should not abide by the law. And I said, that puts us in the same category as the criminals. I mean, basically, the only difference between me and the guy who's going to get arrested tonight for shooting someone, he goes down to police headquarters, he gets fingerprinted, he gets photographed. The only difference is I pay a $48 fee for this. He doesn't. So the one thing we've got going for us is I don't have a criminal record. So a lot of people do need to do this re-registering thing, and we're going to fight this through the court system, and that's what the Heller 2 case does. And Steve Holbrook's a fantastic lawyer, and I believe he will triumph in the end, and hopefully he will. But, for the meantime, we do have to abide by this law, and I don't think moving is the answer. I think fighting this kind of stuff is the answer, because if it happens in the nation's capital, it happens everywhere. I mean, we've seen it spread to 8 states this year alone. And this is how it ultimately ends up. It ends up in arrest and confiscation of law-abiding people who are exercising their Second Amendment.
And I think you're right, Emily. I don't think you can. And not that I begrudge anybody. I know a lot of people who live in very anti-gun states who move to pro-gun states, and I don't begrudge them that at all. But you can't run from your troubles like this. And when a locale becomes so anti-gun that they're now making overt moves just to try to make it as hard as possible to exercise your constitutional rights. When you cede that ground, when you say, all right, well, everybody should just move and let them do that, it's not like that stops at the borders of the District of
Right.
Columbia.
It doesn't fix it. I mean, frankly, like in the process of writing the series I've been writing on getting a gun in D.C. and exposing all these laws, I did get 2 laws changed in D.C. Now, we still have a registration system. It's still ridiculous. It needs to get outlawed. It needs to get overturned. But, by exposing them and fighting back, I've made some progress. And obviously the leverage I have, there are these court cases. And the original Heller decision by, Heller and the plaintiffs and Alan Gura and all the lawyers who are involved in that, they overturned a 30-year gun ban. Thankfully, now I can exercise my Second Amendment rights. And I think eventually we're going to overturn this entire registration process because I think it's not constitutional. And I also think we'll overturn the ban on carry rights, complete ban, because I think that's unconstitutional. So I understand, like you said, I know a lot of people in Maryland are moving to Virginia, and people in Virginia are getting scared. And I do understand, not everybody wants to stay in sight, but if somebody doesn't, then the government will get away from it. And that is the original intent of the Second Amendment, is to prevent government tyranny. So when we see government tyranny, I think we should all band together and fight back.
Absolutely. Listen, Emily, we got to run, but thank you so much for coming on the program, and we'll do this again soon.
Okay, talk to you soon.